Yo, I cannot believe that Oda just added like 1,500 years of lore to the entire One Piece story in just basically 2 pages. Like seriously, I'm kind of starting to think that Oda decided Elbaf would just be the theorist arc of the century, the way that he's been dropping lore bombs every single like week basically. Some of them more obvious and some a little bit less, but yo, in this chapter, a new robot that's 3,000 years old? You know we're gonna have to talk about this one because there are just so many different implications from this for the rest of the story, and I just need to get to the bottom of this with you as soon as humanly possible. So basically, chapter 1144 has really turned things up in my opinion. We are finally really in the thick of it now with the action on Elbaf, where Colon is helping move the Straw Hat Pirates around as Captain Colon. That name still somewhat problematic, I think, but hey, it's also funny. And we finally see that Scopper Gaban is about to begin fighting, and the giant warrior pirates have hit center stage as well. But then of course, for some reason, this is the chapter that Oda has also decided to reveal when and where the ancient kingdom might have originally started. And if you have no idea what I'm actually talking about and why I'm so excited, you're probably new to the channel, so first off, welcome. But you may not know that I have an incredibly deep and obsessive love for the ancient history of One Piece. I actually recently released a huge mega theory about the ancient wars of the One Piece world, and then a few weeks later, Oda straight up revealed the mural and the first and second world stuff straight with the Harley text right here. So the fact that he kind of fed into my obsession here, it's pretty safe to say that I've been really digging everything we've been getting, but I didn't quite realize just how deep the rabbit hole really goes with these robots here. In chapter 1144, Lilith confirms to us now that this robot-shaped laboratory just hanging around on Elbaf is at least 3,000 years old, at least, and Ripley also revealed that none of the giants have any idea what it really is. But on top of that, since I'm talking about Ripley right now, I should also point out that we can use her to scale just how big this robot actually probably was. And by my more or less professional calculations, this thing is stupid big. Like, seriously. Like, Emeth was a pretty big boy on Egghead, but this thing, it is colossal. Like, it makes Ripley look like a regular person, and that's kind of saying something because she's a big girl. She's a baddie. We all love her. And actually, Ripley does reveal to us that this thing could very well be a robot and not just robot shaped, because she does clarify to us that it is tied to robotics in some way, shape, or form, because she actively does say, I thought you particularly would love this, Franky, because you are a cyborg after all. And then, well, he kind of runs into Lilith and Bonnie messing around inside. Kind of cool that, you know, Lilith can't, stay away from this thing, wants to go inside and explore right away. And I also think that it's just unbelievably clear that this thing, regardless of if it's a lab, a robot, or a mobile lab robot thing, is based on the Ghibli film Nausicaa Valley of the Wind. And to be fair, I think the entire series of One Piece is taking a ton of inspiration from this movie, but also some other Ghibli movie like Castle in the Sky. I mean, like, look at these 2 images side by side and please tell me that this isn't a one-to-one straight up reference here. Like, I mean, it even has the same fungus thing. Dude, look at the fungus. Nausicaa is a film about a post-apocalyptic world where society is, in these small environments scattered across the entire world, almost like islands, and the main character is able to communicate with giant ancient creatures, kind of like Luffy, but in her case, it's big bugs, I guess. She does this, travels the world, and tries to reunite and bring peace to the ravaged planets. And I don't know, man, wouldn't it be just super convenient then if Oda revealed to us that, I don't know, the One Piece world just went through 2 massive wars that destroyed the entire planet? Oh, wait. He did do exactly that. So, Lilith here is crazy fascinated by it, meaning that Vegapunk didn't even know it existed the first time that he went to study on Elbaf, which is actually kind of surprising to me based on something I want to theorize about a little bit later that does involve Vegapunk and this new robot. But let's first answer some questions here. What is this thing? Who probably made it? And why are we seeing it here and right now? Well, that's what I want to tell you right now, at least what I think is going on. I'm as excited as you are far, so let's slow down here, man. I kind of need time to process all of this a little bit as well. All right. From what I can tell, seeing this, based on my own research and everything I can find to back this up, there are basically 3 safe options for who or where this robot behemoth actually came from. Now, I think my personal theory, my headcanon here still stands, which is the idea that Nika and the original gods from the moon colony came down and brought this thing with them 5,000 or so years ago to terraform the planet. But then if we want to stay a bit more grounded and out of the space stuff for now, even though it's real in One Piece, this thing could also be from the first world that we learned about and be part of the original kingdom ruled by the Earth King or Earth God from the right side of the Harley here. However, and I want to stress this, I do think that there's actually enough here to kind of say that between Emeth and this thing, maybe you agree, there may also be an ancient scientist who kind of just straight up built a race of robots, and that there are plenty more of them scattered around the oldest civilization of the world, like Alabasta or Wano, or many of them just on the bottom of the sea because the world got flooded. And this might actually line up pretty well with all of the space automatons we saw up on the moon that were built by a scientist as well, and the cover story with it, who was building them and then got, a heart attack because he saw Enel explode things. And I actually want to briefly elaborate on that idea, because I do think sometimes the timeline gets a little bit twisted and lost with all of these side stories. The 2 oldest things that we know about in the One Piece world right now that we have actually seen are the tree on Ohara and the castle Alubana in Alabasta. Now, the tree on Ohara was said to be planted around 5,000 years ago, and the castle of Alubana was built around 4,000 years ago. And now we have been introduced to this mech thing, epic looking, which is at least 3,000 years old as well. And then after that, the next biggest thing that we know is a big calendar shift in the One Piece world around 1,500 years ago, half the time. And I think you know where I'm going with this, but it kind of means that probably around halfway into this new robot's life, the world had a massive shift and just completely changed. I guess you didn't know this, around 1,500 years ago, the One Piece world shifted from the heavenly calendar to the sea circle calendar, something that I personally theorize happened due to a massive war that took place on the planet, which I now believe might have been the first world from the Harley text, then kind of shifting into the second world. Now, the reason that I really want to talk about that real quick is to give you some perspective on the first and second worlds of the One Piece era, because some of these places in the modern timeline still stand and have been standing for over 5,000 years, and that means that somewhere deep below the surface, ancient history is still very much alive. And Vegapunk has confirmed to us that the world flooded once before, probably twice, and we saw that with Wano and Jinbei's cover stories as well. And that means that we're at the peak of this old One Piece world. Like, all the islands we see are actually the tops of mountains. Places like Arubana, the Atom Tree, Old Wano may have actually stood high on top of, entire mountain ranges, which is kind of wild considering that New Wano is even higher up than just that. And this seems pretty clear to me because the world eventually flooded due to what I can only assume were the ancient weapons being used during the Void Century War, and probably another war before that in the form of the first Harley text where we learn about all of that. So the entire world looked completely different, and everything was just way more technologically advanced as well, it seems. And for just so long, you probably know, theorists like myself thought that somewhere, maybe left tail, there was one advanced place, like one kind of breakaway civilization. But no, I think that Oda has made it pretty obvious that just straight up the entire planet was probably significantly more advanced. Now, I don't know about you, but it really has me thinking that everything that we think is mystical or magical, like the eternal flame, demon powers, devil fruits, all that stuff, is actually just lost advanced, technology from this long forgotten era. Now, this isn't a completely new theory, but I do think that Oda has been trying to clarify that, this is the correct lens to view the entire One Piece world through, which, at least for me, is awesome. Like, it's sick. Like, dude, we get to learn all about ancient geniuses, advanced sci-fi civilizations, and unearth the deepest lore ever in a pirate manga. I love this story so much. Honestly, like genuinely, the fact that this is my job is just the biggest blessing of all time. Like, I love all of this so much that I can tell you who probably did it. It's him, this dude, one Mr. Sun God Nika, you might have heard of him. And as I mentioned, one idea for who built this robot, and possibly Emeth as well, is just straight up Nika himself. I mean, I've suggested that based on NL's cover story revealing advanced technology tied to the sky races on the moon, Nika, alongside the forest, earth, and rain god, brought the ancient weapons and then some more advanced tech, like these robots potentially, down to the blue planet thousands of years ago when they ran out of resources. Now, in my theories, I've actually proposed that it might have been 5,000 years ago, you know, when the tree of Ohara was originally planted, and that they brought down the ancient weapons to terraform the planet for some reason, planting these massive trees like the Sunlight Eve tree, the tree of Ohara, and the Atom tree, and well, wouldn't you know, a massive robot that's at least 3,000 years old, if not older, maybe, who knows, 5,000 or so, like maybe it was on the moon before, just saying, now appears on the Atom tree. You know, the tree we recently learned about is the greatest and oldest of them all from Saul in chapter 1135, and also going back to Ghibli, in Castle in the Sky, the ancient robots also are from this, you know, civilization that's in the sky. Now, from what I've learned, you know, through all these years analyzing One Piece, normally these details wouldn't be called out for fun. Oda has always clearly drawn connections here between the true history of the world in form of the mural, this new 3,000 plus year robot, and the Atom tree, which is now basically confirmed to be over 5,000 years old as well, since Saul confirmed it is the oldest Atom tree, and the tree on Ohara is around 5,000 years old. I know, quick maths, it needs to be at least that old as well. Then, of course, there is the fact that this entire country straight up worships none other than the sun god Nika. And then when we just go on and throw in the fact that Elbaf has ancient stones that can create heart, light, rainbow technology stuff, something that Vegapunk had been working on in recent years, and then add in the fact that we now finally get depictions of the fuel source of the ancient kingdom, the eternal flame or the forbidden sun, I think it's now very safe to say that Elbaf is probably the country with the deepest ties to the ancient kingdom's origins. Now, if you're curious, my new running idea here is that Elbaf was where the sun god Nika, the original Lunarian scientist, actually first came down from the sky and there constructed a civilization on the blue planet. That's why I think he was viewed as a god there, because he brought prosperity in the form of all of this new advanced tech and helped advance and build the world. So mark it now, please, if we find out that Nika was a Vegapunk-like figure from the ancient past and that this robot was actually part of his original lab where he created devil fruits or something like that, I'm gonna be a One Piece genius. Nah, I'm just kidding. Like, I'm wrong so often, but it's a fun idea, I think. And, you know, Oda is drawing all these ties, so it does at least make it a possibility, which would be really fun. Especially considering the Harley text saying that Nika was the one who punished the human kingdom for trying to use the Forbidden Sun in the first place. So maybe it's tied to, you know, the Drums of Liberation thing, and it was actually hurting him or someone stole it. Could explain why Luffy's heartbeat is now waking up ancient tech like M. Now, in this context, I've also posited the idea before that the Eternal Flame was actually Nika's Lunarian flame in the past, so maybe that is all playing into that idea as well, which kind of reminds me, Emeth woke up because of Luffy's Gear 5 form, right? You remember that? So there's a really good chance, I think, that if Luffy starts fighting on Elbaf, well, this robot could also wake up. What do you think? Like, so far, he's only very briefly accessed Gear 5 against Gobber Gaban, and we do know that Emeth took a few good and long uses of Gear 5 properly fighting to properly wake up as well. And I think it would just be a really good way for someone like Franky or Vegapunk to finally learn more about the true history. And I can even see like a world where Luffy and Loki go to fight the Holy Knights while Franky and Vegapunk Lilith here are just chilling by this new robot and it suddenly wakes up. But then of course, as you can see, it's pretty broken down right now, so maybe Franky needs to sync it up with himself or learns from it how to defeat the Holy Knights. I mean, whatever it is, it could be pretty cool if Franky gets something out of this. Like, and it also kind of makes me personally wonder what's gonna happen with that Vegapunk clone that we saw. Like, Lilith says that she wants to make this new robot her new lab, and we do know from earlier chapters that Lilith needs a lab to reawaken the Vegapunk clone that they took from Egghead. Maybe this living clone can then help unravel the true secrets of our new robo body right here, our colossal titan thing. if you wanted to go all Attack on Titan with it. And with that being said, I actually also wanted to quickly point out to you that this new robot could actually be the first in a pretty cool pattern that I think I might have noticed here, because we've learned on Egghead that Joy Boy had a robot companion in the form of Emmet, right? You remember that. And since he's been getting a lot of focus with all of this stuff recently, I kind of noticed that this seems to be the case for Franky as well. I mean, like, he might just straight up be the equivalent of Luffy's robot body in the modern era. So I would at least think that there is a pretty decent chance that this robot on Elbaf was the original Nika robot body, you know, kind of completing all three of them. Now, of course, I could be completely off with this idea, and I do think I should also pitch you some other thoughts that I had on this. Like, for example, the idea that Nika or the Sky Races came down after humanity already had developed these robots, the Forbidden Sun, etc., on their own, or they might have been up on the moon watching humanity develop and grow, but had to step in when they became too dangerous, or possibly when they got too close to godhood in their eyes. Again, similarly how in Ghibli, in the Castle in the Sky, the robots also still watch over the ruins of the ancient kingdom there, even though its population is already long gone. Now, let me just tell you, I would love to find out at some point that the One Piece world was actually just like an ant farm or a game of Sims for the Angels of the Moon. Like, there is a really cool episode of the Twilight Zone that kind of covers something like that, or like, I guess, simulation theory for our own world, and it's like one of the most important pieces of science fiction, so I wouldn't be surprised if Oda was pulling an idea from something like that. If you don't really like this idea, let me put your mind to ease here, because the reason I'm less inclined to believe that is because the robot is over 3,000 years old, and Emmet was only around, I think, 1,000 years old as far as we know. And considering that Emmet literally attacked Marijoa, and it's likely that Imu was in charge of the ancient world at that point as well, it kind of seems odd to me that if Imu is from the first world like it seems, he created all these robots and they so willingly then just go betray him. Kind of weird, but of course Imu could just be from the Void Century and the original king was just someone completely different. Sadly, at this point, we still don't know enough to say for certain that Imu existed across all of One Piece history. It just kind of seems likely, you know, with the depiction of this human king with the crown, you know, that Imu wears as well, but in all fairness, that may just be the crown of the World King or the Earth God, and that's why Imu is now wearing it himself, and it might actually explain why it's way too big for him potentially, or for her. Alright, that was quite a lot, but now before I move on from the robot stuff and cover the other really big thing that happened in this chapter, there's one other idea I wanted to run by you quickly. Considering the fact that Vegapunk, either in his normal form or through Lilith, has been consistently tied to these robots, I kind of wonder if that would be hinting at a deeper connection here as well. You know what I'm getting at? Like, as I said earlier, I do think it is very likely that these robots may have been created by an ancient figure similar to Vegapunk, and their advanced research is what basically then allowed them to make these, you know, sentient robots. And while I personally would really like to think that this person was Nika, I do think it's also likely that if Nika used a fruit to gain his sun god powers to begin with, maybe a scientist was the original user of the brain fruit, and that allowed them then to make all of this other stuff. But then again, I guess if that were to be the case, that would also have to mean that their tech was already pretty advanced before the creation of devil fruits, which I guess is a bit of a toss-up as well. Kind of what I'm getting at here is that Oda may be using the current brain fruit wielder, Vegapunk, to maybe subtly hint at the power used to make the ancient technology, and it would fit very, very nicely, I think, with how Oda seems to be fixated on lineage and inherited will of late. Like, we've got Luffy as the next Joy Boy Nika, Blackbeard seems to follow Zebex's will, Zoro is the modern-day Ryuma, who we know he's related to, and now Vegapunk could be the stand-in character for the modern-day super genius who creates crazy technology. Or maybe there was like an ancient Daedalus type figure from ancient Greece, you know, if you know the myth, who created all of these super machines in the ancient One Piece world. That would fit in pretty well, I think, with Vegapunk's entire don't fly too close to the sun thing that he said as well. In fact, I even think it could just be the case that this robot could be a satellite for an ancient scientist, you know, kind of like how Lilith is one of Vegapunk's satellites. And that could actually be why Oda showed us Lilith, out of all people, finding this one robot here before Franky and Ripley ever got there. It may be a subtle nod to the fact that this robot is similar to her, a satellite, and if Luffy reawakens it with his Gear 5, maybe we'll even learn from that very scientist's consciousness what actually happened during the Void Century, or potentially even earlier. And God, that would be some absolute peak storytelling, to be completely honest with you. I would love for that to be the case, because it could kind of help Vegapunk truly help keep the will of Ohara alive for good. I mean, just imagine the parallels and storytelling that Oda could be getting at here. We saw Vegapunk at the burn site of Ohara, which inspired him to go to Elbaf to learn all their secrets. And then he goes to do all this research all on his own, uncovering way too much, and just narrowly escapes death by the world government. And now he goes to Elbaf once again, the site of yet another big world tree with deep history, and actually solves it. He learns what happened alongside Robin, Saul, and the rest of the crew, but then Elbaf maybe burns down as well, and that just leaves him and his old brain to keep a complete recollection of everything that is in the library of Ohara, now on Elbaf, in his punk records, which we know is currently being flown to safety. It could be pretty fulfilling and a pretty nice plot twist, I think. With all of that being said, I do now really want to shift over our conversation away from the robots for a little bit, as hard as that is, hopefully for you as well, and talk about a theory that seems to be growing more and more likely that I've been a pretty big fan of. Because there is this idea that one of the Holy Knights may actually be a double agent. Yeah, I haven't really talked about it too much in recent chapters, and I was considering making like a whole video on it, but I did feel like after Gunko's crazy conversation here in chapter 1144, I could finally tell you about the Holy Knight's traitor ideas that have been floating around. Now, I have been quick to call out that Gunko feels very different from the other Holy Knights, and that very clearly is still the case right now. Even they themselves, specifically Summers, are kind of drawing a lot of attention to her weird habits. He's pointing out how she eats, he's talking about her music taste and worldviews, and he's giving her a lot of joking flack for it as well, but it does seem to have always been the case, as she seems to be the only one that isn't an actual celestial dragon, at least based on how Oda didn't name her Saint Gunko. The idea that I myself have been playing around, and that I know some other people are bringing up as well, is that Gunko may be a Revolutionary Army member in, disguise, being undercover. But I also think it might be just as likely that she's a former Revolutionary member that was then turned evil or hypnotized by someone like Emo Garling, and that may be how Dragon knew about the Holy Knights to begin with. But I know you also want to entertain the idea for a moment that she is a deep undercover agent, and what that might actually mean. So, for starters, she matches the aesthetics of the Revolutionaries pretty well. She's got the signature Revolutionary Army goggles that all of the captains wear. She really tries to make it seem like being a Holy Knight is a blessed and high honor when she's attacking Loki, and she really trash talks common people way more than the other Holy Knights like Summers, Killingham, or even Shamrock do. It feels like she's trying to emulate someone like Chorlos, and she's like the poster child for embodying what one would stereotypically think a Holy Knight would probably act like. But what if all of that is just straight up a facade? What if she's acting, and the reason she seems a little bit over the top here and lost in the sauce is because she's just straight up really trying to sell it to the other Holy Knights? But then, if that were to be the case, Summers might actually be onto her, and that's why he's so quick to point out her habits, like overindulging on the good food, and how she may not like the current world when she points out her music taste as well. Which, in all fairness, she's got some banger tunes in there. I mean, we love ourselves a good Soul King stan, and if she is one, it's yet another good point, I think, in the probably not that bad of a person camp as well. And in case you missed a subtle nod in the chapter, New World, the song that she listened to on her TD headphones, is a very famous song by the Soul King, aka our good boy Brook here. Now, my interpretation of this would be that maybe after Kuma returned with Bonnie to the Revolutionary Army, Dragon may have stepped up and gotten a little bit more aggressive, so he sent someone undercover there. Someone young, someone who could reasonably get recruited while the Holy Knights were on a mission somewhere, and that person might have just been Gunko. Because looking at her, I mean, you kind of gotta admit she does look a lot younger compared to everyone else around her, and that might be because being a young person who gets a taste of the elite life would be the most convincing and discreet way to sneak someone into their ranks. I'm not sure if you'd agree, but to me she doesn't look that much older than someone like Sabo or Zoro, but we do know that she's been with the Holy Knights for at least a little bit, because Summers reveals this in this chapter when he points out that Gunko has a post-mission tradition of listening to her music. And this of course tells us at least that she's been around the block with the Holy Knights at least a few times. Now it does also kind of make you wonder what sort of missions these guys are actually going on, because we literally have never seen them at all in the entire series outside of God Valley, and Dragon has clearly been waiting for them to make a move before the Revolutionary Army kicked it into high gear as well. So what have these guys actually been up to? Because wouldn't you think that someone somewhere that we know, some of these very powerful characters and pirates, would have actually faced off with the Holy Knights or called them out by this point if they were doing anything in a major country or conflict? Like, just something to think about if you go and reflect on the series. I'd kind of love to see some ideas about this in the comments if you have any. But then again, as I said earlier, I think it could just as likely be the case that Gunko has been kidnapped and brainwashed as a way to send a warning to the other Revolutionary Army members. Like, first Ginny, then Gunko. It would be a pretty good but messed up way for Emu and or Garling to send a pretty strong message. If you try to step to us, we will convert your forces into ours. You know, that sort of vibe. It's really messed up. I don't think we need to talk about this, but it also kind of tracks with, you know, how morally screwed up all of them actually are. Now, I've also been thinking recently that there is a good chance that Gunko could be an example of another character like Ginny, you know, a young woman who was brought up to marry a Holy Knight or Celestial Dragon. Maybe she was even married to the same person that Ginny was, and that's gonna be a cool plot point with Bonnie being on Elbaf right now as well. I guess it could be as simple as Gunko is Shamrock's wife. Wouldn't that be something else? I mean, they could be a cute couple that attacks and commits atrocities together. Aw, cute. I mean, no matter how you cut it, really, those Holy Knights are a really messed up group that has some weird and creepy stuff going on behind the scenes. And God, would I love for this double agent stuff to be true just so they could get a taste of their own medicine. But what if they just need a little bit more love in general? But not just normal old boring love, no. A brutal taste of overwhelming power struck into them with a mighty fist of love. Something that only a true master of emotions, like the Minister of Love, Scorpio Gaban, can actually whip up for us. Because that's right, as cheesy as it sounds, I do think that love might unironically be the strongest power-up that's still left to be uncovered in the story, and you need to understand that it's the secret at the entire center of the Elbaf arc, but also kind of the entire series. Check out that video right here that breaks it down for you, because I promise it's not just all hearts and cuddles and the power of friendship, but a painful tale of betrayal and deep emotions that shape the entire story. Again, I think it's pretty cool, but otherwise, thanks for watching. Thanks again to all our fantastic, beautiful, intelligent Patreon members. No, you guys are genuinely great. Check out the Patreon if you haven't yet, and I will see you in the next one.